Okay, this week we're going to be studying the Kalpa of Decrease. It's the lecture number 9 of Teachings for Victory, Volume 2. And we will start with reading the Gosho. It's a short Gosho, so we'll probably tonight, unlike these past few weeks, we'll be reading the Gosho and getting into the lecture and hopefully finish it all. But be aware that next week we'll start reading the Gosho, the first Gosho of the Hope-Filled Teachings of Nichiren Daishonin. Now this is this brown one. We all have here at the table. We've been waiting a while to get to it. We're going to start by reading the Gosho, the drum at thunder, at the gate of thunder, so that basically next time we'll be starting with this lecture series. We're going to finish this up tonight. So before I start tonight and talk about the Kalpa of Decrease, I wanted to start by making sure that you understand about the key concept of this Gosho, and it's the 3 poisons. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to read you the definition of the 3 poisons, even though I know you know what the 3 poisons are. There are a lot of three. There's 3 virtues, 3 paths, 3
something.
Everything. So here's the 3 poisons: it's greed, anger, and foolishness. Right? Okay. It says 3 poisons: greed, anger, and foolishness. The fundamental evils inherent in life that give rise to human suffering. So these 3 things is what the Daishonin is going to talk about, gives rise to suffering. In the treatise on the great perfection of wisdom, the 3 poisons are regarded as the source of all illusions and earthly desires. The 3 poisons are so called because they pollute people's lives and work to prevent them from turning their hearts and minds to goodness. The words and phrases of the Lotus Sutra by Tentai speaks of the 3 poisons as the underlying cause of the 3 calamities of famine, war, and pestilence, stating, because anger increases in intensity, armed strife occurs; because greed increases in intensity, famine arises; because foolishness increases in intensity, pestilence breaks out. And because these 3 calamities occur, earthly desires grow more numerous and powerful than ever, and false views increasingly flourish. In the simile and parable 3rd chapter of the Lotus Sutra, Shakyamuni says to Shariputra, he, the thus come one, is born into the threefold world, a burning house, rotten and old, in order to save living beings from the fires of birth, aging, sickness, and death, care, suffering, stupidity, misunderstanding, and the 3 poisons, to teach and convert them, and to enable them to attain supreme, perfect enlightenment. Okay, so he said, what did he just say there? Let me read that again. He says, he, the thus come one, is born into the threefold world, a burning house, rotten and old, that's the threefold world, in order to save living beings from the fires of birth, age, aging, sickness, and death, the 4 sufferings, right? Care, suffering, stupidity, and misunderstanding, and the 3 poisons, to teach and convert them, enable them to attain supreme, perfect enlightenment. So, in short, what is the purpose and function of the advent of the Buddha?
To save everyone.
Right. And how does he do that?
By propagating the law.
But what does he do in the process of propagating the law? He lives as a Buddha. Okay? He doesn't just speak a lot of flowery words. Okay? He walks the walk. He not just talks the talk, he walks the walk. And so to emphasize that then, before I start reading the Gosho, the 3 kinds of treasure from the writings of Nichiren Daishonin ends this way. And I always come back to this. Is one of those ones I've got memorized from a long time ago. I can just put it in the metadex and it takes me to the 3 kinds of treasure. But it ends, this Gosho, the 3 kinds of treasure, ends with Nichiren saying, the heart of the Buddha's lifetime of teachings is the Lotus Sutra. And the heart of the practice of the Lotus Sutra is found in the Never Disparaging chapter. What does Bodhisattva Never Disparaging's profound respect for people signify? The purpose of the appearance in this world of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings, lies in his behavior as a human being. So how does he teach? Through his own behavior. Okay? This is the key. This is not about knowing stuff. This is about becoming a better person. This is about inner transformation. That's basically what President Ikeda is going to talk about bringing out as a salient issue, this. Doing Kosen-rufu. But how do you do Kosen-rufu? Through each of our behavior as human beings reflecting the 10th world that's active and engaged in our 9 world lives. Our behavior as human beings. Human beings would be common mortals. Our behavior, though, is that of the Buddha. It's the 10th world. You get it? So reading the Gosho now, starting on page 1120, the Kalpa of Decrease, it's Gosho number 169 from volume 1 of the writings of Nichiren Daishonin. The Kalpa of Decrease has its origin in the human heart. As the poisons of greed, anger, and foolishness gradually intensify, the lifespan of human beings gradually decreases and their stature diminishes. Before the introduction of Buddhism in the lands of China and Japan, the non-Buddhist scriptures of the 3 sovereigns, the 5 emperors, and the 3 sages were used to bring order to the hearts of the people and govern the world. That would be the non-Buddhist teachings of Confucianism and Taoism, right? When the hearts of the people gradually diminished in good and grew adept at evil, it became impossible to restrain profoundly evil offenses because the wisdom of the non-Buddhist scriptures was shallow. Since the world was ungovernable with the non-Buddhist scriptures, the Buddhist scriptures were gradually introduced, and when they were used in governing, the world became tranquil. This was solely because the wisdom of Buddhism can fully elucidate the hearts of the people. What are called non-Buddhist writings today differ in spirit from the original non-Buddhist scriptures. Although when Buddhism was introduced, the non-Buddhist scriptures and the Buddhist scriptures vied with each other, in time the non-Buddhist scriptures were defeated and the ruler and the people no longer made use of them. But as adherents of the non-Buddhist scriptures became followers of the Buddhist scriptures and confrontations came to an end, these adherents extracted the essence of the Buddhist scriptures, increased their wisdom, and incorporated it into the non-Buddhist scriptures. Foolish rulers thought that this was actually the wisdom of the non-Buddhist writings. Do you understand what he's saying? The Confucianism and Taoism, the truth that was represented in those belief sets, okay, was not as profound originally as they were later when they borrowed from the wisdom of Buddhism to make their belief sets more reasonable or attractive or make more sense. Do you understand? And he's saying that because these rulers were not able to discern the difference between the true pure teaching of Buddhism and these mixed up kind of convoluted borrow what is necessary to make it sound good non-Buddhist teachings. They would sometimes rely on the non-Buddhist teachings rather than the source of the wisdom that those non-Buddhist teachings were actually reflecting. Do you understand? But in the absence of knowing how to discern the difference and being fooled into thinking that non-Buddhist teachings that were expressing Buddhist beliefs were these Buddhist beliefs were from they slandered. Okay, so that they're going to create chaos. He says, moreover, when good wisdom gradually diminished and evil wisdom surpassed it in people's hearts, the rulers tried to govern society with the wisdom of the Hinayana Sutras, which are also included among the Buddhist scriptures. But the world was not at peace. Why? Because that's Hinayana. What does Hinayana not possess? A desire for the happiness of others. It's only concerned with self-salvation, right? Okay, so he says, at that time when the rulers spread the Mahayana Sutras and used them to govern, order was somewhat restored in the world. After that, when the wisdom of the Mahayana teachings was no longer adequate, the wisdom of the Sutra of the One Vehicle was introduced. Do you understand? What's the wisdom of the Sutra of the One Vehicle? What's the Sutra of the One Vehicle? What's the only sutra that combines? The Lotus Sutra. When the wisdom of the Sutra of the One Vehicle was introduced and used to govern the world, and for a brief time while the world was at peace. The present age is such that neither the non-Buddhist scriptures, the Hinayana Sutras, the Mahayana Sutras, nor the one vehicle of the Lotus Sutra has any effect. Do you hear what he's saying there again? So he's saying we're in the latter day of the law. You know, not even the one vehicle of the Lotus Sutra will have any real efficacy at this point in time. He says the reason is that the enormity of the greed, anger, and foolishness in people's hearts is equal to the superiority of the world-honored one of great enlightenment and great good. Do you understand what he's saying there? He's saying basically that the enormity of what's involved in being able to extract the true teaching from the Buddhism of the harvest, it would be so on par with the level of evil that they'll offset one another. Okay? In other words, again, don't forget the Buddhism of the harvest doesn't contain Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, even though it does. It's not clearly there. Right? So he's saying, that's why what is the one vehicle of the Lotus Sutra? It's the whole Lotus Sutra. What do you get out of reading the whole Lotus Sutra? Unless you understand the Buddhism of the sowing, not much in the latter day of the law. Get it? So he's saying, the reason is that the enormity of the greed, anger, and foolishness, these three poisons in people's hearts, is equal to the superiority of the world-honored one of great enlightenment, Shakyamuni's great good, or the Buddhism of the harvest, he's saying. The Buddhism of the harvest is great good. To illustrate, in the keenness of its sense of smell, a dog is superior to a man. Moreover, in picking up the scent of birds and beasts, its nose is not inferior to a great sage's supernatural power of smell. An owl's keenness of hearing, the kite's sharpness of eye, the sparrow's lightness of tongue, and the dragon's magnificence of body, all surpass even the faculties of a worthy. Thus, the extremity of greed, anger, and foolishness in people's hearts in the impure world of the latter age makes it difficult for any worthy or sage to control. This is because though the Buddha cured greed with the medicine of the meditation on the vileness of the body, healed anger with the meditation on the compassion for all, and treated foolishness with the meditation on the 12-link chain of causation, teaching these doctrines now makes people worse and compounds their greed, anger, and foolishness. Why? Think of what he's saying here. This is because though the Buddha cured greed with the medicine of the meditation on the vileness of the body, healed anger with the meditation on the compassion for all, and treated foolishness with the meditation on the 12-link chain of causation, which is Hinayana, by the way. Yeah. Teaching these doctrines now makes people worse and compounds their greed, anger, and foolishness. Why? Because they're trying to combat their inherent greed, anger, and foolishness with provisional teachings which no longer have the power or the efficacy to do anything to that greed, anger, and foolishness. Not only that, to do so is to ignore what the Lotus Sutra has said, which is to get rid of this meditation shit. It was all an expedient means. When you see meditation anywhere, that's in opposition to the Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the Buddhism of the sowing, right? So that's why he's saying, this is actually all making things worse. It's not only not working well, it's now become slander, because we're now in the 5th half millennium. We're in the latter day of the law. You're not supposed to be doing these meditation on the whatever and the whatever and the whatever. He's trying to get back to the point that now is the time when you should only chant the Daimoku. Remember, we just read that last week. So he's saying, for example, fire is extinguished by water and evil is defeated by good. In contrast, however, if water is poured on fire and that has emerged from water, it would be as if one had poured oil, producing an even greater conflagration. So think of an oil fire, and you pour water on it, it becomes more of a problem, right? He's saying they're just adding to their problem. Now in this latter evil age, great evil arises less from secular wrongdoing than in connection with the doctrines of the religious world. So what did he just say there? The greatest source of slander is not what you do in the secular world. The greatest source of slander is to not understand the correct teaching. Okay, so it's not about not being a nice person or committing adultery or farting in church or whatever. It's not about any of those kinds of things. That's the topsy-turvy, upside-down, right and wrong of the 9 worlds. Buddhism teaches this is all predicated on the Lotus Sutra and the Buddhism of the sowing. That's what the Daishonin's whole teaching is. He says, now in this latter age, great evil arises less from secular wrongdoing, less from doing bad shit to other people than it is in connection with the doctrines, not understanding the correct teaching and instead practicing incorrect teachings, which not only don't have any efficacy, they don't have any ability or power to change. In the latter day, they are now slanders to participate in. Do you understand? He says, when people today who are unaware of this endeavor to cultivate roots of good, events that lead to the ruin of the world occur all the more. So they're all doing Nimbutsu prayers to save the country. They're all doing Shingon, true word prayers to save the country. And the country's going more and more down the tubes. That's what he's talking about here. Our difficulties are becoming greater rather than less because the way we're trying to solve the difficulties is incorrect for the time. Do you understand? So he's saying, although superficially, if you're, although in your best intention, but you don't have the capacity or the understanding, the correct understanding to perceive the truth. He says, although superficially it may seem to be an act of good to provide support to the priests of the Tendai True Word and other schools of the present age, in reality is a great evil, surpassing even the 5 cardinal sins and the 10 evil acts. Okay? So it's not a small thing. It's a very important thing for you to understand what Nichiren's teaching is and how strict he is about this point. Which is why when I say it, it sounds like I'm being a butt wipe. I'm not giving anybody any latitude for anything other than what I think. No, what I say is what Nichiren says, frankly speaking. And if you can change his mind, you can change mine. But until I see that, or I see Daisaku Ikeda saying something differently with a whole lot of shit to back it up, I'm going with the Gosho. Okay? So he says very clearly that to practice anything other than Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in the latter day of the law only leads to disaster. Understand that. For this reason, in order that peace reign in the age, if a wise man existed in the world with wisdom, like that of the world one of great enlightenment, Shakyamuni, and if he met with a worthy ruler like King Senyo, and if together they devoted themselves to putting an end to these acts of good and putting an end to these acts of good and committed the great evil of censoring, banishing, cutting off alms to, or even beheading those persons of the 8 schools who are thought to be men of wisdom. Listen to what he just said. Let me just say that again. If together he and a great ruler, a person of wisdom and a ruler that had the power and the authority, together devoted themselves to putting an end to these acts of good. Now he's saying that with tongue-in-cheek. What are the acts of good he's referring to? He just mentioned them in the previous paragraph. I don't want you to get confused. These acts of good that he's saying put an end to are these acts of supporting the provisional schools, the temples of the provisional schools, the priests of the provisional schools. Okay? He says, if we putting an end to these acts of good and committed the great evil of censuring, banishing, cutting off alms to, or even beheading those persons of the 8 schools who are thought to be men of wisdom, then the age may be pacified to some extent. Just eliminating their outflow of poison would help improve the circumstance of the day. He's not even talking about replacing it with the Buddhism of the sowing yet. Do you understand? He didn't, and then he just said, just stop that. and things will get better than they are right now with you trying to improve it by helping these bad things. Do you understand? That are no longer appropriate for the time. They weren't always bad things. At one point in time, they were expedient means necessary. They're no longer necessary because the teaching of the Lotus Sutra has already been expounded. The teaching of the Buddha, of Shakyamuni, saying, honestly discarding expedient means, not accepting even a verse or phrase of the provisional teachings. That's what it says in the Lotus Sutra. That's very clear cut. That's what Nichiren is saying. That's the problem. Nobody's catching that expressed statement. Okay? This is explained in the first volume of the Lotus Sutra, where it says, the true aspect of all phenomena can only be understood and shared between Buddhas. Do you understand? Where's that come from? The Lotus Sutra? Yeah, but what chapter?
Chapter 2.
Exactly. In the phrase consistency from beginning to end, beginning indicates the root of evil and the root of good. And end indicates the outcome of evil and the outcome of good. Why is he able to say that? How could they be both? Because they are both. Yeah. Don't forget that. You can't separate good and evil. They're the same thing. Okay? They're two sides of the same coin. He's saying, one who is thoroughly awakened to the nature of good and evil, from their roots to their branches and leaves, is called a Buddha. So a Buddha understands there's no such thing as good and evil. A Buddha understands everybody and everything because it doesn't separate anything. Do you follow? Mm-hmm. Everything is neither can't save or guaranteed. It's based on your actions moment to moment. This is because, though, the Buddha cured greed with, one who is, he says, one who is thoroughly awakened to the nature of good and evil from their roots to their branches and leaves is called the Buddha. Tentai stated, life at each moment is endowed with the 10 worlds. Chang'an stated, the Buddha intended these as his ultimate teachings. How could they ever be easy to understand? Myolo added that this principle is the ultimate revelation of his Tentai's final and supreme teaching. The Lotus Sutra states the doctrines that they preach will never be contrary to the true reality. What does that mean? I'm going to read it to you, but do you know what that means? When you read that, what does that mean? The doctrines that they preach, who's they? The Buddhas. The Bodhisattvas of the earth are also Buddhas, right? Mm-hmm. The people teaching the true and correct teaching is the they. The doctrines that they preach will never be contrary to the true reality. What's that say? What's that mean? Buddhism and daily life will never be separate. They'll never be on two different realms, in two different planes. They're always exactly the same. Everything that governs your religious outlook is what's governing your secular your secular daily life. If you understand Buddhism, you understand your secular life. Do you understand? In other words, don't understand religiosity and daily life as being separate. Okay? Because they're not. How you behave every day, moment to moment, is your religiosity, regardless of what you say when you're being religious. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. That's sort of like you reap what you sow. So he's saying, the doctrines that they preach will never be contrary to the true reality. Tentai commented on this, saying that no worldly affairs of life or work are ever contrary to the true reality. So this Buddhism, the sowing, will always be 100% in compliance with the reality of what you experience in daily life, what you face in daily life, and have the power and efficacy for you to triumph in daily life. Do you understand? It's not about being spiritually well. It's about being 100% well. It's about being a full circle well, the kind of well that people want, the kind of well that only Buddhists can teach. Only Buddhists can understand this true reality. It just said that from the second chapter of the Lotus Sutra. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. Okay, so understand you're tied into all this. You must discover this truth before you can share it with others. Mm-hmm. You can see it read, you can read it theoretically, but until you realize that it's you that they're talking about, you can't actually express it to others correctly. All right? Only theoretically. A person of wisdom is not one who practices Buddhism apart from worldly affairs, but rather one who thoroughly understands the principles by which the world is governed. Someone that is a Buddha in daily life, not a Buddha up on a hilltop. Come and see me when you get a chance. Do you understand? Everybody's with me, right? Mm-hmm. So when the Yin dynasty became corrupt and the people were suffering, Tai Kung Wang appeared in the world and beheaded King Chao of the Ying, bringing to an end the people's misery. When the second emperor of the Qin dynasty caused the people to taste bitterness, Chan Liang appeared and restored order in the world, enabling them to know sweetness. Though these men lived before the introduction of Buddhism, they helped the people as emissaries of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings. And though the adherents of the non-Buddhist scriptures were unaware of it, the wisdom of such men contained at heart the wisdom of Buddhism. If there were a ruler outstanding wisdom, if there were a ruler of outstanding wisdom in the world today, at the time of the great earthquake of the Ashoka era, or at the time of the great comet of the Brunei era, he would surely have heeded me, Nichiren. Or even if that had not happened, when strife broke out within the ruling clan in the 9th year of the Brunei, or when the Mongols attacked in the 11th year of the same era, he would have welcomed me as King Wen of the Chao dynasty welcomed Ta Kung Wang, or sought me out as King Cao Ting of the Ying dynasty sought out Fu Ye from the 7 Ni away. Thus, it is said that the sun and moon are not treasures to one who is sightless. Do you understand what the analogy that he just made there? He's saying, if there had been a truly wise ruler, rather than the emperors that were on hand at the time that I made my advent, after I called out all this stuff that was going to happen, the minute they saw it, they should have been right over, doing what I said, rejecting the provisional teachings, and supporting me in what I was saying. But they didn't. So he's saying it was because of their own blindness to the truth. So what he's saying here is, it is said that the sun and the moon, he's comparing himself to the sun and the moon, are not treasures to one who is blind. Okay? And that a worthy man will be hated by a foolish ruler. Rather than go on at length, I will stop here. The heart of the Lotus Sutra is just as I have explained. You should not think of it as otherwise. Great evil portends the arrival of great good. If all of Jampadvipa were to be thrown into chaos, there could be no doubt that this sutra would be widely propagated throughout Jampadvipa. I have decided to send Acharya Daishin to pay a visit to the grave of the lay priest Ryokuro. In the past, I had thought that if there were people in the Kanto region who had heard this teaching, I would go to their graves myself and recite the verse section of the lifespan chapter of the Lotus Sutra. If I were to go there under the present circumstances, however, the entire province would hear of it within a day, and it would probably cause an uproar as far away as Kamakura. Even though they have steadfast faith, wherever I go, people must fear the eyes of others. When I thought how much the lay priest Ryokuro might be longing to see me, since I had not yet visited, it seemed to me that there was probably something I could do. Thus, to begin with, I have decided to send a disciple to recite the verse section of the lifespan chapter before his grave. I ask for your understanding on that point with my deep respect. But notice that he says, when I thought how much the deceased lay priest Ryokuro might be longing to see me, okay, since I had not yet visited. I thought that was pretty cool. Okay, so let me read the background since I forgot to start it that way. Background, page 1122. Neither the date nor addressee of this letter is known. Judging from the concluding paragraph, Nichiren Daishonin may have sent it via his disciple Acharya Daishin, to someone in the clan of the late lay priest Takahashi Rokuro Hyoe, a believer who lived in Kajima in Fuji District in Sagura Province. In the opening statement, the Daishonin says, the Kalpa of Decrease has its origin in the human heart. He then explains the world declines as a result of human delusion, and that as the greed, anger, and foolishness of people's hearts intensify, progressively higher teachings are needed to check that influence. In the present time, the latter day of the law, those three poisons are so pervasive that the provisional teachings not only fail to restrain them, but aggravate them all the more. In this age, the Daishonin explains the worst evils actually arise not from secular misdeeds, but from attachment to the doctrines of the various schools of Buddhism, the provisional teachings, whose practice no longer leads one to salvation in the latter day of the law. Citing the passage from the Expedient Means chapter of the Lotus Sutra, the true aspect of all phenomena can only be understood and shared between Buddhas, the Daishonin explains that only the Buddha's wisdom is capable of discerning the supreme truth that will bring about peace in the world. He also explains that a person of true wisdom is not one who carries out the Buddhist practice in isolation from the world, but one who thoroughly comprehends the principles by which the world may be governed. This is in keeping with the Lotus Sutra's teaching that the ultimate reality is manifest in all phenomena. In this sense, the wise ministers who helped bring peace to their dynasties in China in the ages before the introduction of Buddhism may be said to have grasped a portion of the Buddhist law. Though the ruler of Japan did not heed the Daishonin's admonition that only faith in the mystic law could restore peace to the land, the Daishonin nevertheless was convinced that his teaching would one day flourish. As suggested by the title of this letter, the disasters besetting society in his time were viewed by the Daishonin from one perspective as stemming from human delusion and attachment to inferior teachings. However, as indicated by the statement, great evil portends the arrival of great good, the Daishonin also interpreted them from another perspective as heralding the rise and spread of the supreme law. So I will now go on to the lecture. And normally when I go into the lecture, I go ahead and I read, because it's the next week, I read the gray section. We just read that very short Gosho. I will be repeating myself to the point that it sounds redundant. And when we get into it, it's repeated again. So I'm going to go right into the lecture portion of page 142. Skip the gray because it's going to be repeated as we go along and called out. Okay, is everybody with me?
Yes.
All right, so going on to page 143. You there? Okay. One day, pardon me. One day my mentor, Josei Toda, and I were talking about the Soka Gakkai's mission to widely propagate the mystic law. And I asked him why it was important to strive in faith with the spirit of not begrudging one's life, taught in the Lotus Sutra. He replied to the effect, so this isn't a quote, but he said, to the effect, on our planet, people kill each other in wars. Our economies are based on the survival of the fittest and do not necessarily lead to human happiness. And many of society's leaders, who by all rights ought to help others, instead look down on others and exploit people. And the same kind of thing is found in such spheres as politics, science, and religion. Call it humanity's karma, but society is complex and full of contradictions. Nowhere can we find the fundamental path to happiness for all people. Only Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism, President Toda said, sets forth the means for fundamentally transforming our karma. It teaches the path of eternity, happiness, true self, and purity, the path of lasting fulfillment and satisfaction. There is no higher path in life than this. That is why if you give your all for the sake of faith, you will never regret it. That was President Toda's encouragement to President Ikeda in asking the questions, why must we not begrudge our life? Deeply moved by Mr. Toda, this is President Toda going on, He says, deeply moved by Mr. Toda's words, I renewed my determination to give my all in pursuing this unparalleled path in life, just as he taught, to not begrudge my life. He says, there is no more exciting, satisfying, or meaningful way to spend one's life than dedicating it to the noble cause of realizing happiness for all humanity. So what did he just say there? He said, there is no more exciting, satisfying, or meaningful way to spend one's life than attaining Buddhahood in your present form. Okay? The Kalpa of Decrease, the writing we will study in this chapter, affirms that putting into practice the teachings of Nichiren Buddhism constitutes the fundamental path to happiness for all people. It constitutes the path for the attainment of Buddhahood in your present form. A Kalpa of Decrease refers to a period when period's vitality or life force wanes, both spiritually and physically, owing to the three poisons of greed, anger, and foolishness intensifying in their lives. The present era in which we find ourselves is regarded as belonging to a Kalpa of Decrease. In such an age, the wisdom of Nichiren Buddhism is indispensable if we are to live with strength and integrity, unaffected by the three poisons, and achieve true happiness. This is because Nichiren Buddhism offers profound and perceptive insights into how we can overcome the inner delusions characterized by the three poisons that are the root cause of unhappiness. Let me read that again since I butchered it pretty good. Buddhism is in such an age, the wisdom of Nichiren Buddhism is indispensable if we are to live with strength and integrity, unaffected by the three poisons, and achieve true happiness. This is because Nichiren Buddhism offers profound and perceptive insights into how we can overcome the inner delusions characterized by the three poisons that are the root cause of unhappiness. This writing, titled The Kalpa of Decrease, is thought to have been composed after the death of the lay priest Takahashi Rokuro Hyoe, a follower of the Daishonin who lived in the Suruga province and addressed to someone close to him. Some scholars have suggested that it was sent to a family member or relative of Takahashi's who was a fellow practitioner in Suruga, someone like the lay priest Nishiyama, for instance. In any case, from the content of the letter, which frankly lays out the essence of the problems then facing the country, it seems most likely that the recipient was a member of the warrior class. This letter's date has been placed around 1276, sometime after the first Mongol invasion of 1274. The lay priest Takahashi had been a follower of strong faith who sincerely sought out the Daishonin's teachings. In the letter, the Daishonin says that he had personally wanted to go and perform a memorial service at Takahashi's grave after his passing. But during the Kamakura period, Suruga province was directly controlled by the Hojo clan, many of whose members, as followers of existing Buddhist schools, were hostile toward the Daishonin's teachings. If he were to travel, he notes, it would most certainly cause trouble for his followers in the region. So instead, he decided to send a disciple to recite the verse section of the lifespan, the 16th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, at Takahashi's grave in his behalf. The Daishonin always showed the utmost concern for the safety and well-being of his followers. So he always used his Buddha wisdom to think steps in advance of rather than, what's the best way to do this for the sake of the people I'm trying to encourage, for their safety and well-being. At that time, a sense of impending crisis filled the land as fear spread that another attack by the Mongol forces would bring about the destruction of Japan. People felt immense anxiety and didn't know where to turn. The Kamakura military government had ordered the True Word and other established Buddhist schools of the day to conduct prayers for the defeat of the enemy, and the general populace was also placing great faith in these prayers. The various schools all complied with the government's directive in the hopes of gaining official reward for their efforts. Even non-Buddhist religious teachers and divination masters were said to have participated. Does this ring a bell as something that's parallels this, that happened in history say in the last 70 years, 80 years. What happened in World War II? What brought about President Makaguchi to go and remonstrate with the high priests, the priesthood at the head temple? What had occurred? The country was at war.
Mm-hmm.
The emperor was God. Shinto was that belief set. The emperor had said for all temples to take on the Shinto talisman, to pray for the emperor and to pray for the country's victory.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, that very act would bring about defeat according to the Buddhism of the Soe. Do you understand? So he's saying the various schools all complied with the government's directive, just like in World War II, in the hopes of gaining official reward for their efforts. Just like in World War II, even Nichiren Shoshu. Okay, understand that. That's what brought about the beginning of this big crack. Okay? It says even non-Buddhist religious teachers and divination masters were all said to have participated. That's the same thing that happened in World War II. Everybody jumped on the emperor's bandwagon. Let's go conquer the world, become a great, what do they call that? Colonial power. In other words, the nation's ruler, the religious establishment, and the people were all filled with fear and uncertainty. The epitome of a doomed nation whose population was controlled by greed, anger, and foolishness. Because what was the whole population saying? It's okay to conquer those other people. It's okay to kill all those people in China. It's okay to kill all those people in the Philippines. It's okay to do a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. Okay? The country was saying it's okay to do things that cause the karma that create defeat, suffering, and unhappiness. They were as responsible as the military. That's what President Ikeda is trying to let us understand through this Go Show. We're never off the hook. We're responsible for standing up for what's correct. The fact that no one stood up for what was correct is what led to Japan's ruin. Okay? Those that stood up for what was correct went to prison, but they were the beginning of the great good that followed the great evil. Right?
Yes.
Frankly speaking. So, he's saying, in this letter, the Daishonin outlines how in the latter day of the law, the negative influence of the life-sapping three poisons had been strengthened and reinforced as a result of the teachers of various erroneous schools appropriating and misusing the wisdom of the great good expounded in the sutras by Shakyamuni Buddha. Because don't forget, by World War II, and that's not talking about this example, but carrying on with mine, there were already Nichiren schools. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo already existed. There were a lot of Nichiren schools that were chanting for the destruction of the enemies of the emperor. Okay? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. What do you think that was all about?
It didn't work out.
It didn't work out, did it? That's what he's trying to explain to you right now. In between the lines, listen to what he's saying. The grave error of slander, of confusing and corrupting the Buddha's teachings, the Daishonin asserts, was the prime reason why the nation was headed toward ruin. Same thing happened in the 40s, in the 30s. As a result, he writes, even the wisdom of great good of Shakyamuni taught in the sutras could not withstand the magnitude of greed, anger, and foolishness of the people of their karma, the karma that they were making for themselves, the people of the latter day. None of the wisdom of the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings, not even the wisdom of the one vehicle of the Lotus Sutra, were effective against it. It was thus also a time of the most urgent crisis for Buddhism itself. However, the Daishonin conveys the powerful conviction that this was precisely the time for a wise person possessing wisdom of great good like that of Shakyamuni Buddha to appear and work together with a worthy ruler to eradicate error and ultimately actualize the widespread propagation of law throughout the world. That's what Nichiren did in 13th century Japan, right? When this circumstance arose. That's what the leaders of the Soka Gakkai did in World War II. Exactly like Nichiren. Do you understand? They were Buddhas just like Nichiren. Do you understand? There's no separation. We can read this as meaning that the wisdom of the correct teaching can, through the efforts of people of wisdom, us, we're not powerless ever. We stand up for good no matter what. Where does this start out? Why is it so important, this spirit of not begrudging one's life? Okay? That's what we're talking about here. If you won't begrudge your life like President Makaguchi, like President Toda, if you're willing to go to prison for your convictions, the great evil that put you there will be defeated. It cannot defeat you. And you will be the source of the wellspring of the great good that follows. Understand? That's just cause and effect. That's just being the Buddha in the Sahe world. This is not rocket science. It's really just mugiwashi, doubt-free faith. Do what you're supposed to do. Do what the teaching says to do at the crucial moment. The crucial moment is, do I want to go to prison? Really? No. But am I ready to? Bring it on. Bring it on. That's why I was born. We can read this as meaning that the wisdom of the correct teaching can, through the efforts of people of wisdom, be manifested in society as a force that benefits all and generates a great wave of positive change. That's what happened. His position is that this is the only way to free humanity from the scourge of greed, anger, and foolishness in the latter day of the law. The only way for Kosen Rufu to occur is for people of wisdom and faith to stand up and be the Buddha in their present form. Period. All right? It's not by the existence of the teaching of Nichiren. It's by the efficacy expressed by the people that of pure faith that utilized the teaching of Nichiren. It's the only way people will listen. In the treatise, The Object of Devotion for the Observation of the Mind, the Daishonin also discusses how the four leaders of the Bodhisattvas of the earth appear in the form of wise Buddhist practitioners and worthy rulers. In the Kalpa of Decrease, he goes on to state that a true person of wisdom in the realm of Buddhism is one who practices the correct teaching in society in order to realize the happiness of all people. In the letter, the Daishonin explains that the correct teaching of Buddhism provides the wisdom for curing the three poisons and actualizing happiness for all people and peace throughout the land, which the Lotus Sutra reveals is the true intent or purpose of the Buddha's preaching. Okay? The people of the evil at latter age, however, lost sight of the fundamental intent articulated in that sutra. Instead, they embraced partial or expedient provisional teachings of the Buddha, which then turned into harmful influences that only exacerbated the greed, anger, and foolishness in people's hearts. It was at such a time that a person of wisdom appeared and boldly took action to achieve the original aim of Buddhism. He's referring to the Daishonin, right? Which is to enable all people to attain Buddhahood. A Buddha appeared that with the conviction in the teaching to make all people equal to himself. All right? This person possessed the true wisdom of the correct teaching of Buddhism and the power to implement that wisdom in society for the benefit of all people. And he's talking about Nichiren Daishonin. So what did he do? Did he go kick the shogunate's ass? No. He struggled and survived to the last moment of his life. He never gave up. And because of that cause, his teaching continued past that point and continued to the point of what I just referred to in the 40s with World War II. Okay? And that's why we're all sitting around this table right now for the benefit of all. The Kalpa of Decrease identifies Nichiren Daishonin as this true person of wisdom who appears in the latter day. He has the dedication, practical ability, and leadership to guide all people to genuine happiness and to actualize the widespread propagation of the mystic law. And with that, we'll start reading the actual Gosho that we skipped. And since the time is the time, I'm going to stop now and start this next week. Okay? So next week, we will start on page 146, where it says the intensity of the three poisons in the latter day of the law. Is everybody with me?
Yes.
And then everybody, and there's plenty to read there and talk about. And then we will go right into beginning. If we finish that next week, we'll go into reading the first Gosho, the drum at thunder, at the gate of thunder. Okay? Everybody got any questions? Everything's good? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.